Greetings, this is the Questing GM, and this is RPG Day 2020. And finally, we are on day 31 for the word experience. It certainly has been an experience making videos on a daily basis for 31 days. Definitely brought in some new perspectives, some new momentums, maybe a little amount of shamelessness, and spewing out so many inconsistent thoughts and ramblings, on many random subjects about role playing games. But I think it's definitely an experience to cherish and maybe to learn from. So, what can we talk about experience? The easy short answer I would say is D&D being built on the idea of killing stuff and gaining experience is probably the reason why we have the problem of murder hobos, because experience incentivizes killing, and therefore people will kill stuff because they want experience, among other things. So if you don't want that to happen, the easiest way is to take the experience out of the killing and give it experience for something else. Obviously, D&D 5e in general already has that all covered, with milestone experiences rather than calculated experience. And it's probably becoming the main method for many groups nowadays, at least at least the ones I observe. And it may change the entire paradigm that monsters will not be tied to experience anymore in maybe future editions, or at least within some time within this edition that this option is already provided. And I suspect a lot of a lot of DMs will be much more relieved to be giving out experience for different things rather than the act of killing. That's the short topic on it. But I think if it's something that I really care a bit more about experience is player experience and GM experience, and also how experience shapes our views of the hobby that we may not notice or we may not expect, and that forms kind of a important or substantial portion of how we view the hobby as a whole in our personal views, basing on my own experiences, playing from second edition, third edition, small smattering of fourth before life took over, and then coming back into fifth edition, and I've been playing it for a good maybe 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years, since the birth of the edition. I've definitely experienced many things. The different changes in the rules and the mechanics, the meta game practices involved with those mechanics, the different type of players that I had playing using those mechanics. It had an experience has definitely shaped my perception and my expectations about different editions, how they work, how players behave according to those rules, how GMs behave according to those rules, some bias preferences towards certain type of rules, certain type of mechanics, certain type of play styles. Our experiences builds up our expectations or our view or our views of how role-playing games should be. That's not something wrong to have. I mean, we are all creatures of comfort, and we all have our own bias and preferences as human beings. But I think we don't recognize how often we let our experiences inform that, rather than critically looking or reading the text as it is, without those experience lenses to really cloud either our judgment or our clarity into saying that if this is how the rules is written, it's probably the way that it should be used, and not bringing any emotional assumptions or baggages along with it that would make us feel that this rule is dumb, this rule is stupid, or this rule doesn't make sense, or this rule is too broken or overpowered, or that sort of thing. I At least for myself, at least, and only speaking for myself, I try to always go into different rules with a clean slate, even though it has similarities with previous editions, or may not have similarities with previous editions. That was definitely a very difficult baggage to get clear of when I went into 5e, and seeing a lot of recognizable things that sounded a lot like third edition, and some of the fourth edition things, and trying to remind myself not to read it from a third edition experience, but rather to see it as a picture of a whole, in how it's tied with the other 5e mechanics. So experience can be a good thing, because it probably makes you a bit more aware, more cautious, to what people are telling you, a bit more skeptical sometimes, which may, with a healthy dose of cynicism as well, to how things should be done. But at the same time, like I said, experiences can also kind of really ruin, or at least become a little bit of a stumbling block when it comes to accepting change and seeing weirdness rather than something more coherent. Experience is definitely the best teacher when it comes to either learning rules, running games, dealing with players, playing the game. And based on my own experiences, I'm obviously lacking in some areas of experience than others. I've not played as much as I've ran, so maybe I'm not an experienced player compared to other GMs, but I do use my experiences as a GM to try to be a better player for the GM who is running. In some ways, I think in a role-playing game, even a bad experience, like running a bad game or having played in a bad game, is something that informs you as well. It helps you to identify red flags of certain behaviors, certain play styles that that you don't want to be involved with, or you see that as, hey, yeah, maybe I do the same thing and I shouldn't be doing that in future for my games. Final closing thoughts about experience, and maybe as the entire RPG a day 2020 as a whole, since I'm being provided with this opportunity, is that experience can never be used to trump over anyone. Just because I've been playing role-playing games for a good 20 years doesn't mean that I'm better than any other role-player game. In fact, there is no sense of seniority or hierarchy, I believe, inherent in role-playing games. Just because someone's been playing role-playing games 40 years when I've only played 20 years doesn't mean that his opinions matter to me as much. And doesn't mean that he's right over me. This is not a job per se. You may have many experiences, but if your experiences does not reflect mine or has any relevance to mine, we can go fly a kite. As far as I'm concerned, we can share experiences. We can find our similarities and common ground from experiences, but I don't think at least I try not to use my experience to really dismiss someone, discount someone. Someone new to the hobby always has something new to contribute to the hobby in some way. It's not to say that I never get grognardy about things like, oh, in the old days this is how we used to do it. I think I try to do that mostly in jest and sarcasm rather than being serious about my assertions. Because if experience has really taught me about role-playing games, the best experience is having fun. And it's really easy to have fun sometimes. It's really easy to have fun, and it doesn't take a lot of experience to have fun. So that's it. That's RPG a Day 2020, Day 31 for experience. And I hope this experience of you watching through my videos has been a helpful one. It's been an interesting one. It's something that we can really have more discussions about, makes things more positive for the hobby as a whole, hopefully. So thank you all for being with me on this ride, giving me the experience. I'll probably be seeing you all hopefully for RPG a Day 2021.